one side, we need to increase the tax net, right? So we cover more people, so the base is larger. But then at the same time, we also need to make it equitable. So in your opinion, Masrur, what are some of the, I would say, best practices in terms of a tax system?
Increasing a tax GDP ratio or tax base or tax collection, I think it needs to be a two-pronged approach. On one hand, without proper enforcement measures or effective enforcement measures, there will always be people who will not pay tax despite their obligation or qualification to actually pay tax or higher tax. So that's enforcement. But enforcement alone as well cannot do it. The second part, the complementary sort of part of the two-pronged strategy is the governments have to create an atmosphere where compliance becomes easier and compliance become actually a fun thing. First of all, your tax administration, your tax policy, which is the tax laws and provisions and which sets the obligations and so on, and the way that those are enforced, the tax administration part, the collection part, they need to be such that they don't actually add unnecessary formal or informal costs to the business of tax payment or to business of tax compliance. Number two, procedural fairness. How do you file taxes? How do you file your returns? How do you pay? How do you get your audits done? How do you get your tax credits done? All of these procedures need to be very friendly and very fair. And they don't necessarily need to, they cannot actually make discrimination between taxpayers, certainly not towards smaller taxpayers and smaller businesses. Thirdly, discretion and discrimination. This is something that is actually a much talked about concern of taxpayers, particularly business taxpayers. Around the world, certainly in countries where the tax system is weaker, that the tax officials often take advantage of discretionary powers which are allowed to them through inefficient tax policies. That leads to harassment or discrimination. I would also say what is important is transparency into this whole process. Why you're paying tax, why you are being asked for certain amount, whether your self-assessment is respected or not, as long as you have met the procedures and as long as you've gone through all the right ways. And then what is also important is for the better compliance, what we call taxpayer outreach and taxpayer education. A lot of the problems are with the tax authorities, but oftentimes problems also lie with the taxpayers.